let's turn this good-looking kid into this monster. And it starts, of course, taking all of these images into Adobe Photoshop. Here in Adobe Bridge, let's just select all the parts that I want to combine together to create my monster. I'm selecting those with the Shift key. I'll also select with the Command key or the Control key this Davis character. What a good-looking child, isn't he? And so we've got those all selected. Let's bring those open with the Command O or Control O. We can open those all up here inside of Photoshop. Now inside of Photoshop, of course, we have this great tabbed interface that's happening. Don't forget the keystroke of the tab, the Command key on the Macintosh, or the Control key on the PC, and the tilde key on your keyboard. What's the tilde key? The tilde key is below the Escape key, and it's that little ñ that in niños, you know that one? So we hit the tilde key, and you can go through each of the files which is open. Now that's sort of a difficult way to work because you can't see all of them. So here's a great super user tip and technique. If you've got a lot of images open and you want to see all of them, go here to the View menu. Excuse me, you wouldn't go to the View menu because you're not as foolish as I am. You go to the Window menu and down here to Arrange, and over here to, you want to float all windows. So what that's going to do, it's floating all of my images. That's a good start. I can see all of them. But now, under Window, this time he does it correctly, Arrange, Tile. Check it out. I've now tiled them all so I can see them. I can see the different elements and drag them around and use them. Let's move this over here, just like this. And let's start our project here. I want to grab from my elements. Let's start with this one right here and use our Move tool. So this is a fairly simple project. Even I can do this. So you target with your Move tool. You open up your image. And by the way, when you photograph your subject, your victim, you photograph them straight on, fairly flat lighting. Make sure your background is a little bit soft like mine is, just like this. And this file size, let's just check that file size because you need to know these things. Image size. My image size is about 4 by 6 at 300 pixels per inch in resolution, or 1300 by 1900 approximately with width and height. That's good to know that. That's a good size to crop this to. Okay, let's get this started. I click with my Move tool, and I can drag this element right over. Drop it onto my victim like this and put it into position. It's that easy. Now they're not going to be scaled the right size, so let's go ahead and do this. In fact, let's bring in all of our elements. We'd like a mask over his face. We'd like to bring in a little bit of a headdress here like this. We of course need to have bolts in here, so let's bring those bolts in. Let's leave those there. And what do we have over here? We've got more scars to put in. Oh, a neck scar is always good to throw one of those in. Is this easy and fun or what? Nah, what's this? Oh, got to have a wig. Let's drag the wig in. So let's put all of the rough pieces into position, and then we can turn those off by turning off our visibility over here, just like this. And then let's bring up the size of this image overall. With my Command plus key on the Macintosh or Control plus key on the PC, I can bring up the size within the frame. But check this out. With the Option, Command, and the plus key, or the Alt and Control and the plus key, you can then change the overall size. Did you see that? Let's do that again. I can change the overall size of this with the combination, but if I just use the Command or the Control key, it changes it within the frame, which is a really nice way of using the scaling features, the zooming features here in CS4. Okay, let's learn about the basics of transforming. Because once you bring these in, you want to transform them so that they fit over the face. We know our simplest transformation tools, of course, under the Edit tool and Free Transform. I chose Free Transform because then I can slide this up and I can start to slide and distort this. In fact, I can distort it and squeeze it or stretch it from any of these points to start getting this to work. I'm going to get this pretty close right there. That looks pretty good. And then let's use my arrow keys on my keyboard to reposition this. So I'm using a combination of the arrow keys and nudging this around until it fits just right. Get the eyes to go through. Before I hit the Enter key, I want to show you something else that's really nice for controlling and working with shapes like this. If we go to the Edit menu and down to Free Transform, I can always go over here and I can warp my image. Another great capability. Select Warp. Warp lets me grab right in on this mask and move this around if I want this to be a little bit lower so that the eyes fit in here, just like this. Check that, or I can move the head up a little bit. So you've taken this mask against transparency. That's right. You get all of these masks on Adobe TV. Well, back to the show. Okay, so we've got the mask. We hit the Enter key. So I used a combination of a standard transform and I used the warp capabilities. Now his skin isn't looking quite green enough, so I'm going to add a little bit of skin tone here. One of my favorite ways to add a little bit of skin tone, of course, is to go in here and create a new layer. Right here at the base of my Layers tab panel, I created a new layer. I set the new layer to a mode of color. This is a little bit advanced for me. It is a little advanced. Mode of color on a new layer, and I can go in with my brush tool, select a nice slimy green value here, and I can start to paint in a green shade over my subject. So I'm just going in and I'm tinting my subject. Just a simple way of tinting your subject, and you can turn it on and off. And then now if we start to lay in our overcoat here, so we've got that little bit of green tint happening underneath there. That's looking better. Oh, wait, I colored his eyes. You can always use the eraser tool to go in, and we don't want his eyes to be green, so we're going to go in here and take that out of there. Let's bring up our eraser size a bit and take that out of there. That's much better. How unprofessional of me. Green eyes. Who knows? Okay, moving on here. Let's bring in the forehead here. Let's use our Move tool. Let's move this into position. Let's deselect if I have any selections. You have to select your forehead in order to move it. As you see here, we can then move this down into position like this. You know, I always like to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to nudge this into position. That looks great. Now his head is not high enough. Let's do a little bit of Command-T on the Macintosh or Control-T on the PC. In fact, let's go right up to the Edit menu and back down to Free Transform again, because that's easier. And I want to free transform his head up. That's much better. Let's drop this back down a little bit so you can stretch this around just like that. Perfect. What control? Let's bring in our hair. Let's bring the hair back in. Target the hair. Position the hair. As you can see, this demo is all about using the transformation tools because everything's against a mask already for you. That looks great. We've got that going. What else are we missing? Oh, scars. Scars are us. Ooh, that's great. Target the scar, move the scar, and of course you can adjust the layers. If the scar needs to move down in layer, let's move the scar down so it's underneath our layer. Oh, let's bring it up one more. Right there. You can continue to move those and stack those so you get different effects as it moves over your subject. This is looking great. And what about our final touch would be our bolts. Drop those bolts in, move those into position. First you have to target the bolts, transform the bolts, and move them in. We're almost done. We transform them in, we put them into position. We're set. Incredible.